Usually, when we talk about changing our lives, there's this huge expectation of just like massive, sweaty, grinded out hustle.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. The whole, go hard or go home
Yeah,
mentality.
exactly. We've all been there. You decide you are finally going to get your life together. You decide you're going to be a runner.
Right. Quotation marks around runner.
Right. So you completely overhaul your diet. You set your alarm for 4 a.m., buy the ridiculous expensive shoes, and like download 3 different tracking apps.
And you probably go really hard for about 3 days.
Yep, 3 days. You get terrible shin splints, and by Thursday, you're just eating pizza over the sink and you don't run again for a year.
Which is so common. It's exactly how our brains are wired to fail.
Right. But we are sold this idea that a transformation has to be this dramatic cinematic montage, and anything less is just, I don't know, laziness.
Yeah, the modern internet heavily pushes that exact narrative. The success and hustle culture basically dictates that if you fail to change, it is a moral failing, like you simply didn't want it enough.
Which is just so toxic.
It really is, because when we look at the actual psychology and behavioral science, trying to make massive leaps almost always results in a brutal roller coaster.
Yeah, the boom and bust.
Exactly. You ride high on that initial spike of motivation, but then you crash into exhaustion, and you end up worse off than when you started because now you're carrying the extra mental weight of, feeling like a failure.
Which is exactly why we are kicking off a brand new YouTube series today. So, welcome to a very special deep dive. You are tuning into the premiere of Late to the Game.
It's a great concept.
Thanks. It's a series completely dedicated to giving you the ultimate shortcut to mastering the complex concepts you feel like you should probably already know by now.
And today's topic is a big one.
Huge. Today we are tackling mastering your habits. Our mission is to bust that hustle culture myth once and for all and prove that massive action actually leads to massive burnout.
Definitely. And to do that, we're pulling from some really fascinating sources today.
Yeah, we have a great stack. We're looking at historical archives from the Toyota production system, insights from the Lean Enterprise Institute, psychological breakdowns from Psychology Today, and even the Kurzgesagt channel. Plus, habit frameworks from James Clear and the Art of Manliness.
It's a lot of ground to cover, but it all points to one core idea as the antidote to burnout, which is a concept called Kaizen.
Kaizen.
Right? Yeah, it's a Japanese philosophy that translates roughly to change for the good, or
Okay.
basically continuous improvement.
But, and this totally blew my mind in the sources, what usually surprises people when they dig into the historical archives is that Kaizen actually has American roots.
Yeah, it really does. It traces all the way back to World War II.
Right, because the U.S. government was facing this massive logistical nightmare. They had to rapidly boost military production to supply the Allies, but, they didn't have the time or the steel or the resources to build entirely new factories.
They had to make do with exactly what they had.
Exactly. So they created a program called Training Within Industry, or TWI.
And the genius of the TWI program was its scale. I mean, they didn't go to factory workers and demand they work twice as hard or try to redesign an entire assembly line overnight.
Because that would have just caused strikes.
Yeah.
Or system failures.
Exactly. Total chaos. Instead, they asked for microscopic daily improvements using existing resources. They asked workers a very specific question, which was, what is one tiny thing that would make your specific job 1% easier today?
Just 1% easier. And that shifted the entire psychological burden, right? Moving a toolbox 3 inches closer to the workbench doesn't feel like a radical innovation.
Not at all. It feels almost trivial.
Yeah, trivial.
Yeah.
But you multiply that by 10,000 workers over 4 years, and you are suddenly outproducing the rest of the world.
And then after the war, this American philosophy was brought over to Japan to help rebuild their devastated economy.
Right.
And Japanese business leaders completely internalized it. It became the bedrock of the Toyota production system, which, changed global manufacturing forever.
Yeah, they took that TWI philosophy and elevated it into a whole cultural ethos. You see it clearly when you look at figures like Seikichi Toyota. He invented an automatic loom for weaving cloth long before they even made cars.
Right, the loom. And he designed it so that if a single thread broke, the machine would immediately stop on its own.
Which they called jidoka, meaning like automation with a human touch.
Exactly, because it meant you didn't have humans just mindlessly babysitting machines, letting defective cloth pile up for hours and hours. The process caught its own errors immediately.
That is so smart. And then his son, Kiichiro Toyota,
Yeah.
built on that with just-in-time production.
Yeah.
You only make exactly what is needed, precisely when it's needed. So no excess inventory sitting around collecting dust.
And the overarching goal of all these systems was the elimination of what the Japanese call muda, or waste.
Muda.
Right. Any action that does not add value to the end product is muda.
Right.
So if a worker has to walk across the floor to get a wrench, that walking is waste. If a machine produces a defective part, the time spent making it is waste.
Okay, I have to pause here, though, and ask the obvious question that came up for me. If this philosophy of continuous improvement was originally an American invention to win the war, why did American companies seem to just suffer collective amnesia, while Japanese automakers used it to completely dominate the global market in the 70s and 80s?
That is the big question. And it really comes down to fundamentally different cultural approaches to business and progress.
How so?
Well, after World War II, the American corporate mindset became utterly obsessed with radical innovation. You know, the big, shiny new invention, the massive technological leap.
Right, the home runs.
Exactly, swinging for the fences. Japan, however, having way fewer resources at the time, dedicated themselves to the quiet, unglamorous daily work of eliminating muda.
So while American companies were swinging for home runs and frequently striking out, Japanese companies were meticulously hitting singles every single day.
Yes, and over a few decades, that consistency built in an unbeatable competitive edge that the rest of the world just scrambled to catch up with.
It's wild. So Toyota proved that eliminating waste builds a better car. But the exact same math applies to building a better human life.
It absolutely does.
It all comes down to the undeniable mathematics of compounding.
Right, the math of 1%.
Yeah. If you get 1% better every single day, you do not just end up 365% better at the end of the year. Because of the compounding effect, building 1% on top of yesterday's new baseline, you actually end up mathematically 37 times better by the end of the year.
37 times. That math is profound because it highlights the invisible nature of the early stages.
Invisible, yeah.
Because think about it, a 1% improvement today is virtually imperceptible. If you decide to read one page of a book tonight instead of watching television, you're not going to wake up tomorrow feeling smarter.
Right, or if you save $3, you definitely don't feel rich.
Exactly. And that lack of immediate feedback causes most people to quit. But the compound interest of self-improvement is exponential, not linear.
To really visualize how this happens in the brain, the Kurzgesagt source provides this incredible analogy that I just loved.
The jungle analogy, right?
Yes. So imagine your brain is a dense, overgrown, prehistoric jungle. And the brain is incredibly lazy. Its primary evolutionary goal is to conserve energy.
Always trying to save calories.
Right. So starting a new action, like deciding to go for that run, is like trying to hack your way through that thick jungle with a dull machete.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. It costs a massive amount of caloric and mental energy. But as you force your way through, you trample down some plants, you leave a very rough trail.
And then the next time you perform that exact same action, you walk that exact same trail. So it requires slightly less energy.
Yeah. And as you repeat the behavior, the trail gets worn down into a dirt path.
Over time, that dirt path becomes a paved street. And if you sustain it for years, it turns into an effortless, multi-lane highway.
It's basically the neurological pathways becoming heavily myelinated, right? Meaning the electrical signals travel faster and more efficiently.
Precisely. Eventually, you don't even think about the behavior anymore. It simply happens.
Which brings up a fascinating dynamic the sources highlight about the two different characters operating inside your brain. The wise planner and the impulsive toddler.
I love this framing.
Me too. So when you are trying to build that new highway in the jungle, the analytical, forward-thinking planner is the one who blazes the initial trail. The planner knows you need to save for retirement or eat more vegetables.
But the toddler...
Right. The toddler is the part of your brain that actually executes your daily habits based purely on immediate triggers, comfort, and instant rewards.
And relying solely on the wise planner is a guaranteed recipe for burnout.
Oh, 100%.
Letting the planner do all the heavy lifting every single day requires way too much executive function and willpower. You have to outsource the mundane daily execution to the toddler.
And the toddler only responds to simple, easy routines.
Exactly. You set up a clear trigger, like placing your running shoes directly in front of the bathroom door, so the toddler literally trips over them and just executes the habit without needing a grand philosophical debate about health.
But, and here's the rub, instead of doing the boring work of establishing those small toddler-friendly triggers, people fall into a trap. The Art of Manliness source bluntly calls it masturbatory self-improvement.
It's a harsh term, but it's very accurate.
It really is. It's the illusion of progress without any actual progress.
Yeah.
Like, you spend 4 hours researching the ultimate scientifically optimized gratitude journal.
You watch 10 YouTube reviews, you
Mhm.
compare paperweights, you buy the perfect pen.
Yes. You feel incredibly productive, but you haven't actually written a single word of gratitude. You're just shopping for machetes instead of hacking at the jumble.
Because that illusion of productivity is actually a protective mechanism. It keeps you comfortable.
How so?
Well, this takes us right out of the mathematics and straight into the neuroscience of why change is so terrifying. Robert Mohrer's psychological research on Kaizen points directly to a structure deep inside your brain called the amygdala.
The amygdala. It's an almond-shaped cluster, right?
Yeah, a cluster of nuclei that functions as your brain's ultimate threat detection center.
It's the brain's alarm system. And the crazy part is that the amygdala cannot tell the difference between a physical threat and an emotional one.
That is the key.
Right. So when you set a massive, audacious goal, let's say you tell yourself, I'm going to pay off $100,000 in debt this year, the amygdala just freaks out.
Total panic. To this primitive alarm system, a massive, sudden change to your equilibrium looks exactly the same as a saber-toothed tiger stepping out of the bushes.
Wow.
It registers as a mortal threat to your survival.
Because the brain loves homeostasis, right? Predictability means safety.
Exactly. When the amygdala detects this massive proposed change, it triggers your fight, flight, or freeze response.
But in the modern world, we rarely physically fight our credit card bills.
No, and we can't literally run away from them.
So we freeze.
We freeze.
And freezing manifests as procrastination. I mean, it reframes everything when you realize procrastination isn't always a character flaw or just laziness.
No, it's a biological fear response.
It's that deer-in-the-headlights feeling, where you know you should be working on your business plan, but your brain has paralyzed you to protect you from the perceived threat of a massive lifestyle change. So you end up scrolling on your phone for 3 hours instead.
And this is where Kaizen is basically magic. It circumvents this biological block entirely.
How? Because the steps are so small.
Exactly. A 1% micro step is so infinitesimally tiny that it slips completely past the amygdala without waking it up. The change is simply too small to register as a threat to your homeostasis.
So the alarm never sounds.
The alarm never sounds, and you never trigger the freeze response.
I get the theory, I really do, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
The Psychology Today article suggests setting a goal to read just one sentence of a book, or meditate for one single breath. For a functioning adult, isn't that ridiculously low? Like, how does setting a goal to read one sentence not feel incredibly insulting to your own intelligence?
Oh, it absolutely feels insulting to your ego, especially if you view yourself as a high achiever.
Yeah, it feels silly.
But your ego is exactly what you are trying to bypass here. You are deliberately tricking your perfectionist brain.
Okay, I see.
A goal so small that you would have to actively try not to accomplish it is the only safe way to lay down the very first neural pathway in the jungle.
Because it's non-threatening.
Right. If you tell yourself to work out for an hour, the amygdala sounds the alarm and you freeze. If you tell yourself to do exactly one push-up while the shower water is warming up, the alarm stays asleep.
Because the impulsive toddler can easily handle one push-up.
Exactly. And once you get down on the floor and do one, you almost always find the momentum to do 5. But the contractual requirement with yourself remains just 1.
Okay, so the guards are asleep, the alarm is off, and we are laying down the dirt path. How do we practically steer this vehicle day in and day out?
To actually implement this, the sources point to the operational engine of Kaizen, which is the PDCA cycle.
Plan, do, check, act.
Right. It's a continuous scientific loop that takes all the heavy emotion out of self-improvement.
Can you walk us through an example of that, like a practical application for a complex problem? Let's say constantly working late because your inbox is just a total disaster.
Great example. So, plan. You identify a microscopic change. You decide you will only check your email at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. rather than leaving the tab open all day.
Okay, that's the plan.
Then, do. You execute this as a strict test for 3 days.
Just a small test.
Right. Then, check. You review the hard data. Did it actually save you time, or did you miss a critical message from your boss that caused a massive fire drill?
And then the final step.
Act. If it worked, you standardize it. It becomes your new permanent baseline. If it caused a fire drill, you tweak the rule and start the whole cycle over.
I love that. It treats failure as data, not as a personal indictment. And this logic applies perfectly to a broader business concept from the sources called the theory of constraints.
Ah, yes, the bottleneck theory.
Yeah. The underlying idea is that every single process, whether it's an international supply chain or just your morning routine, has a bottleneck. It has a limiting factor that dictates the speed of the entire system.
And identifying that bottleneck is crucial because any improvement made anywhere else in the system is just an illusion of progress.
It's exactly like highway traffic. Imagine you have a massive, beautiful four-lane highway, but 3 miles ahead, construction forces it to merge down into a single lane.
We all know that nightmare.
Right. And you could spend millions of dollars increasing the speed limit, adding extra lanes before the merge, or paving the road with smoother asphalt.
But you're still going to be stuck.
You can drive 100 miles an hour right up to that construction zone, but you are still going to sit in a parking lot. Improving the 4 lanes does absolute nothing to get you home faster. To improve the system, you have to widen the bottleneck.
So true. And if your personal bottleneck is that you are just too exhausted to cook healthy food at 6 p.m. after your commute, well, spending 2 hours every Sunday optimizing a complicated meal plan or buying expensive Tupperware just won't help you eat better.
You have to address the 6 p.m. energy crash.
Exactly. And this philosophy of targeting the constraint connects beautifully to James Clear's concept of improvement by subtraction.
Which goes right back to eliminating muda, eliminating waste.
Yes, Clear argues that human beings are naturally obsessed with adding things.
We are.
We always want to capture massive upside by adopting new habits, buying new tools, and taking on new projects. But Kaizen teaches us that it is almost always more effective to focus on avoiding tiny losses.
So instead of trying to be brilliantly productive, just try to do fewer things wrong.
Precisely.
Eliminating everyday waste is so much easier than inventing new productivity hacks. Think about the concept of mental movement.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. Constantly task switching between your email, your phone notifications, and the document you are writing, it drains an immense amount of cognitive energy.
Or the waste of waiting. Sitting around for latecomers to join a Zoom meeting before you even start.
My personal favorite is overprocessing. Like spending 45 minutes choosing the perfect color palette for a financial chart that you know for a fact the client is just going to print out in black and white anyway.
We've all done it.
It feels like work, but it adds zero value.
And to effectively spot that kind of waste, one of the most powerful tactics suggested by the sources is to measure backward.
Measure backward. Because we have a really strong bias toward predicting idealized futures for ourselves, don't we?
We live in the hypothetical future.
Starting Monday, I'm going to study for 3 hours every single night.
Right. But measuring backward requires looking at the hard, unvarnished data from your actual past.
So if you want to change your diet, you look at last week.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't eat the 2,000 calories you planned. You actually ate 3,500 calories a day.
And setting a goal of 2,000 wakes up the amygdala and triggers failure.
It's the saber-toothed tiger again.
Exactly. Measuring backward means accepting the 3,500 baseline and just aiming for 3,400 this week. You confront reality and you just get 1% better from exactly where you stand right now.
It is a profoundly humbling approach. It forces you to operate in the reality of your current state rather than the fantasy of where your ego wishes you were.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this right now, trying to figure out how to level up your career, your health, or your relationships without setting yourself up for another burnout crash.
It requires a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
You have to realize that change is a direction, not a destination.
Right. You never truly arrive.
As the sources elegantly note, success isn't owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every single day.
You never get to cross a finish line and declare, great, I'm fit now, the work is over, I can eat donuts forever.
Unfortunately not.
You have to keep paying the rent through continuous, microscopic improvements. So here is our challenge to you for tomorrow morning.
Pick one microscopic improvement.
Pick something so embarrassingly small that it won't even stir your brain's alarm system. Do one single push-up. Read one sentence of a book. Put $1 into a savings account.
Just take the machete and trample down the very first weeds on that new path in the jungle.
Because the initial step takes almost zero effort.
But you are allowing the compounding math to do the heavy lifting for you over the next 12 months.
Exactly. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We spend our entire lives being told we need to take massive, terrifying leaps to change who we are.
Which just leads to burnout.
Right. But what if the most radical, transformative thing you could ever do for your identity isn't a massive leap at all? What if it's simply falling completely unapologetically in love with the boredom of doing the fundamentals just 1% better?
That changes everything.
It does. How would that change the way you view your very next mundane task?